What happens when a member of the British royal family faces off against one of America's most seasoned journalists in a battle of wills no one saw coming? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America, expecting a friendly chat about his charitable work, only to find himself in the crosshairs of the most intense grilling of his media career. The tension was palpable from the moment Prince Harry walked onto the GMA set. What was supposed to be a promotional appearance for his latest Invictus Games initiative quickly transformed into something far more explosive. Stephanopoulos, known for his no-nonsense approach and decades of experience grilling politicians and celebrities alike, had clearly done his homework. As the cameras rolled and the studio lights blazed, viewers across America were about to witness a confrontation that would leave the Duke of Sussex questioning whether he should have ever agreed to the interview. The opening pleasantries lasted exactly 47 seconds. Stephanopoulos welcomed Harry with his trademark professional smile, but those who knew him could see something different in his eyes tonight. There was a sharpness, a calculated intensity that suggested this wasn't going to be another softball celebrity interview. Harry, dressed in his usual business casual attire, seemed relaxed initially, flashing that famous Windsor smile as he settled into the guest chair. He had no idea what was coming. "Prince Harry, thank you for joining us tonight," Stephanopoulos began, his voice carrying that familiar authoritative tone. "Let's start with the Invictus Games. But I think our viewers are more interested in something else entirely. Your recent statements about the American media landscape have raised quite a few eyebrows, particularly your criticism of how American journalists operate compared to their British counterparts." The smile on Harry's face flickered. This wasn't the opening he had expected. His media handlers had assured him the focus would be on his veteran support work, not press relations. "Well, George, I think there's been some misunderstanding about what I actually said. The context was quite different from how it's been reported." Stephanopoulos leaned forward slightly. "The context seemed pretty clear when you told the Los Angeles Times that American journalists lack the sophistication and historical understanding that British reporters bring to royal coverage. You specifically mentioned that American media tends to sensationalize rather than inform. That's a direct quote." Harry's posture shifted. The casual confidence he had walked in with was beginning to crack. "I think you're taking that out of context, George. I was trying to express that there are different journalistic traditions between our countries, and those differences can lead to misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" Stephanopoulos repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You called American journalism shallow and suggested we don't understand the nuances of royal protocol. For someone who's built a new life in America, profited from American media platforms, and regularly appears on American television, that seems rather hypocritical, doesn't it?" The word hypocritical hung in the air. Harry's jaw tightened. This wasn't going according to plan. "I wouldn't characterize it as hypocritical. I think I'm uniquely positioned to observe the differences between media cultures, having experienced both extensively." "Uniquely positioned? Let's talk about that," Stephanopoulos pressed. "You've made millions from Netflix, Spotify, and book deals, all facilitated by what you call shallow American media. If journalism here is so inferior, why do you keep coming back?" The studio fell silent. This felt personal. "I think you're oversimplifying my comments," Harry replied. His voice had an edge. "My criticism wasn't about individual journalists. It was about systemic differences in how stories are reported." "Systemic differences," Stephanopoulos said slowly, as if tasting the phrase. "Like the way British tabloids invaded your privacy, drove your mother to distraction, and contributed to her death. Those systemic differences?" Harry's eyes flashed. Mentioning his mother crossed a line, and everyone knew it. "That's exactly the kind of sensationalism I was talking about," Harry shot back. "Using my mother's death to score cheap points? That's what I meant about American media lacking nuance?" I'm not sensationalizing anything, Prince Harry, Stephanopoulos said calmly. I'm pointing out the irony. You've criticized British media for how they treated your family, and rightfully so. But now you're suggesting American media, which has given you a platform without the same intrusion, is inferior. You're criticizing the very system that's allowed you to rebuild your image. The tension was unbearable. Harry's polished image was cracking under the weight of relentless questioning. You don't understand the full picture, Harry said, frustration creeping into his voice. There are complexities here that go beyond media criticism. Yes, American press has been fair, but that doesn't mean I can't observe differences in standards. Let's talk about standards, Stephanopoulos snapped. Is it journalistic standards to criticize an entire nation's media while profiting from it? To bite the hand that feeds you while asking for seconds? Harry was struggling. What had begun as a promotional appearance was spiraling into a public reckoning, and it was only the beginning. Stephanopoulos wasn't finished. He was just getting started. A prince wouldn't intimidate a journalist who had faced presidents. Let me ask you something else, Prince Harry, he said evenly. You've spoken extensively about your mental health struggles, and I respect that. But you've also monetized those struggles through book deals, streaming contracts, and speaking engagements. How do you reconcile your criticism of media exploitation with your own willingness to exploit your personal trauma for financial gain? The question hit Harry like a punch. His face flushed. For a moment, he had no words. That's completely different, he stammered. Sharing my story to help others isn't the same as media exploitation. I've been transparent to break down stigma and encourage people to seek help. Transparent, yes, Stephanopoulos said slowly, but also profitable. Your book, Advance Alone, was reportedly worth $40 million. Your Netflix deal, over $100 million. These aren't charitable endeavors. You're selling your trauma, your family's secrets, your royal connections to the highest bidder, while criticizing the media for doing the same. The studio audience could feel it. This was no longer a celebrity interview. This was a public unmasking. You're twisting everything I've said, Harry snapped, his voice rising. I never said I was doing this purely for charity. But there's a difference between sharing your story and having it stolen and twisted by tabloids who don't care about the truth. Is there? Stephanopoulos asked. Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing exactly what you accused British tabloids of doing. Taking private family moments, personal conversations, intimate details about people who can't defend themselves, and broadcasting them for money. The only difference is you've cut out the middleman. Harry's face was red. A vein pulsed in his temple. That's not fair, George. My father and brother have had their chance to speak. They have the British establishment behind them. I've been vilified and silenced for years. Silenced? Stephanopoulos' voice rang with disbelief. You've been on more American television shows in 3 years than most celebrities do in a decade. You wrote a best-selling book. You have your own podcast. You're constantly giving interviews. If this is what being silenced looks like, most people would sign up for it. Harry was unraveling, defensive, angry, entitled. You don't understand what it's like, he said, to have every word twisted, to be constantly under attack. Stephanopoulos leaned back, a predator smile forming. Actually, Prince Harry, I do know. I spent years in the White House during political firestorms. I've been attacked from both sides, questioned, criticized daily. But I didn't flee to another country and complain on TV. It was brutal. Everyone knew it. Stephanopoulos had just exposed the weakness in Harry's carefully guarded narrative. That's different, Harry said weakly. You chose politics. I was born into this. I had no choice. Neither did your brother, Stephanopoulos replied, or your father, or your grandmother. They faced the same scrutiny, but they stayed. They did their duty. You left and wrote a book about how hard it was. So tell me, Who really lacks character here? Harry's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. I think you're being deliberately unfair and hostile, he finally said, barely above a whisper. This isn't journalism. It's a personal attack. This is journalism, Prince Harry, Stephanopoulos said, unblinking. This is what real accountability looks like. You've controlled your narrative for 3 years. You've forgotten what it's like to face real scrutiny. And your reaction says everything about why you left the royal family. It hit like a hammer. Harry's media facade crumbled. His expression, shock, rage, panic, was visible to everyone. You want to know why I really left, Harry said, voice trembling. Because of people like you. Journalists who dissect every part of someone's life, judge what you don't understand, and pretend you know better than those actually living it. Stephanopoulos stayed calm. So it wasn't about racism in the royal family? Not about mental health? Not about protecting your wife and children? It was about avoiding accountability? Not wanting to face difficult questions? Harry's composure snapped. Accountability, he shouted. To whom? To you? To people who've never lived a day in my shoes? I don't owe you, or anyone, an explanation for choices I made to protect my family and my sanity. Actually, you do, Stephanopoulos replied calmly. To the British people who supported the royal family, to Americans whose media you've used to rebuild your image, and to the family you've criticized for profit. Harry stood suddenly. His chair rolled backward. This is exactly what I meant, he shouted. This hostile interrogation that pretends to be journalism. You're not seeking truth. You're seeking ratings. Stephanopoulos allowed himself a smile. And you're not helping people with mental health. You're helping yourself. At least I'm honest about what I'm doing. The comparison was lethal. Harry was being unmasked, not as a victim, but as someone fundamentally dishonest about his motives. I don't have to listen to this, Harry said. I don't have to sit here and be attacked by someone with an agenda. This isn't journalism. It's character assassination. No, Prince Harry, Stephanopoulos said, rising from his seat. This is what journalism looks like when the subject can't control the narrative. This is accountability when you can't buy your way out of hard questions, and your reaction proves everything I've said. Harry's face was red, fists clenched. My reaction? He said, shaking. My reaction is to being ambushed. You've twisted everything I've said and turned a discussion about veterans into a personal attack. I've asked direct questions about your public statements. Stephanopoulos replied, if those sound like attacks, maybe ask yourself why your own words sound so damaging when repeated. That was the breaking point. Harry's composure finally shattered. Viewers saw something they had never seen before on American television. A member of the British royal family having a complete public meltdown. You know what, George? This interview is over, Harry snapped. I don't need this, and I don't need you. I came here in good faith to discuss important work, and you've turned it into a circus. The only person turning this into a circus is you. Stephanopoulos replied, calm as ever. I asked legitimate questions about your public statements and business dealings. Your inability to answer them professionally says everything about your character and your fitness for public life. Harry was already storming toward the edge of the set, his microphone pack still attached, forgotten in his fury. My fitness for public life? He shouted. I've done more for charity and public service than you ever will. I served my country in Afghanistan, while you sat behind a desk asking politicians softball questions. The military service jab was meant to be a knockout blow, but Stephanopoulos didn't flinch. You served, yes, for 10 weeks, on a heavily protected base, with more security than most soldiers will ever see. Then you left, just like you left everything else when it got hard. Harry froze. He spun around, eyes blazing. How dare you minimize my military service? I put my life on the line while you were sipping cocktails in Washington. Your service was admirable, Stephanopoulos said. But it doesn't give you a lifetime pass from criticism. And it doesn't excuse your behavior since. You can't invoke your 10 weeks in Afghanistan every time someone questions your $100 million media deals. Harry's hands trembled. His voice rose again. This is unbelievable. This is exactly the toxic media I was warning about. You've just proven my point. Actually, Stephanopoulos replied, his voice cool and precise, I think I've proven mine. You can handle softball interviews with friendly hosts, but when faced with real journalism, you fall apart. You criticize the media, so long as you control the message. But you collapse when faced with accountability. Harry reached the edge of the set, fumbling with his mic as studio techs rushed in. I'm done with this farce, he announced. Done with journalists who think ambush tactics are professional. And I think American viewers are done with entitled celebrities who expect special treatment. Thank you, Stephanopoulos said, for proving exactly what kind of person you really are. Harry finally freed himself from the microphone and stomped toward the exit, his face still flushed. As he reached the studio door, he turned slightly. You can edit this however you want, George, but people will see through your agenda. They'll know you turned what should have been a respectful conversation into a hit job. We broadcast live, Prince Harry, Stephanopoulos replied. There's no editing. What people saw was exactly what happened. A man who can dish out criticism but can't take it, who can attack others but can't defend himself, who runs when faced with the scrutiny he's avoided for 3 years. Harry paused, his hand on the door handle. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around. But instead, he shook his head and walked out, leaving behind one of the most explosive moments in television history. Stephanopoulos turned back to the camera. His expression was composed, his voice steady. Well, that was certainly illuminating, he said. Sometimes the most revealing interviews are the ones where the guest reveals more than they intended. We'll be right back after this break. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, the crew stood in stunned silence. They had witnessed the complete destruction of a carefully constructed public image, and they knew they had just been part of television history. Prince Harry's American media strategy had just imploded, and there would be no coming back from this spectacular display of entitlement and thin skin.